with multiple top 10 matchups and several other very interesting games. This week of college football certainly has a lot to offer. So, with the intro out of the way, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today we are going to be previewing week 11 of college football. First game on the docket here is Ole Miss versus Georgia. This is probably the biggest game that Lane Kiffin has coached in while at Ole Miss, and this is also, I think, Georgia's toughest remaining regular season game. I think they got a little bit surprised last week by how well Missouri played against them, and I think this week they're likely to come out very motivated to make a statement against a very good and top 10 ranked Ole Miss team. Ole Miss obviously has something to prove themselves. They're looking for a 10-2 or 11-1 regular season, and this would go a long way to getting them to that 11-win mark. However, since they lost to Alabama earlier on in the year, they do not control their own destiny when it comes to making not only the college football playoff, but also the SEC championship game. Pretty much the only time we've seen Georgia's defense struggle a little bit this year was in that Auburn game, and that was with a quarterback that could run the football. They really struggled defending the quarterback run in that game, and the Ole Miss has a quarterback in Jackson Dart that can run. Now, I think that was likely a symptom of being unprepared for that quarterback run that week, rather than something that's indicative of this team or its talent/scheme level. So I'm not entirely sure that's going to be as much of an advantage as some people do. However, Quinson Judkins has gotten going these past few weeks, and the passing game is potent enough to where Ole Miss will likely be able to keep somewhat of a balanced attack on offense. However, I don't particularly see any real scenario where Ole Miss's defense is able to limit Georgia all that much. Therefore, my prediction for this game is going to be Georgia 31, Ole Miss 21. I think that this is going to be perhaps a similar game to the way that I predicted the Michigan-Penn State game to go, where the higher ranked of the two top 10 teams sort of pulls away at the end of the fourth quarter, goes on a little bit of a drive, and then scores a touchdown at the end of the game to make it look like it was never really a contest, even though it was very close for 3.5 quarters. Miami versus Florida State is the next game to go. Obviously, this is a really big rivalry game in the state of Florida, and I kind of think this game is going to be closer than Vegas and a lot of people do as well. The spread is 14.5 in this game, which I think is kind of weird because Miami should be 7-2. You know, we kind of forget that they lost a game that they had no business to, but this is a team that should be 7-2 and probably ranked as well. So I think this is a good Miami team that has a decent shot at getting to 8 wins in the regular season, even if they end up losing this game. But this is also a game that, to me, has program builder written all over it. And what do I mean by that? I mean that typically early on in every successful rebuild that a program goes to, the head coach circles a game and says, this is the game where we're going to upset the team, and that's going to build this program. So a good example of that, last year when Florida State beat LSU, that was the program building win for Mike Norvell. And this could be Mario Cristobal's program building win. I don't think Florida State's playoff chances are completely gone if they lose, but I do think they are firmly on the outside looking in, and it would take perhaps a upset of a Texas team in the Big 12 championship game in order for them to get back into the conversation. But even with a loss, I don't think their season is particularly over. Even going 12-1 and missing the playoffs, but winning the ACC is a tremendous accomplishment, and it should be viewed as a successful season anyway. However, I don't actually think Florida State's going to lose this game. I think Florida State's really, really good. I think they've kind of been slept on when it comes to national championship contenders. I think they're probably the team with the third best chance of winning the national championship behind Georgia and Oregon. So I believe somehow they're going to pull away the win here by the score of Florida State 28, Miami 24. I do think this is going to be perhaps a little bit of a defensive game, but I think when it comes down to it, Florida State is going to find a way to win this game. Utah versus Washington, a big game in the Pac-12. Who would have thought? I do think Utah is very good. However, this game is pretty simple to me. If Utah had Cam Rising, I think they might be the best team in the Pac-12. But they don't have Cam Rising. And because of that, they don't particularly have any real threat in the passing game, despite having a really good tight end. But they don't stand a chance in this game, in my opinion. I think the spread is the way that it is for a reason. I think Washington is fairly easily going to end up with the W here. And this isn't even the toughest game left on Washington's schedule, in my opinion. I think that's next week versus Oregon State. I think Oregon State is just built to match up very well with Washington. They've got somewhat of a ball control offense that can run the ball against pretty much anybody, and a quarterback that is plenty good enough to make plays in the passing game. This game, however, I think Washington is going to be able to load the box. I think they're going to be able to play one-on-one with the wide receivers that Utah has, and I think they're going to win fairly easily. I have Washington winning by the score of Washington 31, Utah 17. Tennessee versus Missouri. This is a big game, not necessarily in the sense that it's going to affect anything. I think Tennessee is a lamb heading into the slaughter next week against Georgia, and Missouri already played them and lost. But as far as these two programs are concerned, I believe that getting to that 10-win mark will be a big deal. And whoever loses this game also basically loses their chance at getting to 10 wins. Unless the bowl game is fairly a favorable matchup for them, which is possible. But they would have to win the bowl game to get to 10 wins, which is never the situation you want to be in if your goal is 10 wins, which for both of these teams, I think that should be the goal. If Missouri wins this game, they've got a fairly straightforward path to getting to 10 wins because they play Florida and Arkansas in the next 2 weeks. If Tennessee wins this game, there are still most likely going to have to depend upon the bowl game in order to get to that magical 10-win mark. Ultimately, I believe Tennessee's run game and pass rush are going to be too much for Missouri. I think this is going to be a tremendously close game, but I think at the end of the day, Tennessee pulls out the W by the score of 34-31. USC versus Oregon. I included this game for one simple reason. I enjoy laughing at USC. They're going to get fucking obliterated in this game. The spread should probably be 30, not 15. I don't think USC stands a chance in hell. I don't even think they have a puncher's chance. You know that phrase? Typically, that's a phrase for like a boxer or a UFC fighter where if they get in the ring, they can sort of get lucky with a punch or somebody makes a mistake and then they take advantage of it and then they get the knockout punch kind of out of nowhere. I don't even think USC has a chance to do that. I think that Oregon is on a different goddamn planet than USC, not only as a program right now, but as a football team this year. I think Oregon is going to absolutely dominate this game. I have a generous score here for the USC defense by having Oregon win 51-35. I think that Oregon probably takes the foot off the gas somewhere in the middle of the third quarter. So they probably only score 1 or 2 touchdowns after that. And because of that, I think that Oregon's only going to score 52 points against the worst defense I've ever seen. Rutgers versus Iowa is the next game that I'm going to talk about here. And I pretty much just wanted to talk about this because of what the over and under was for this game. So Iowa is a 3-point favorite, and the over under is 28.5. That means that Vegas does not believe either of these football teams are capable of scoring more than 2 touchdowns, which is absolutely hilarious and incredibly amusing. Now, Rutgers has a real chance to win this game. They play defense. They've got a runner at the quarterback position who can break off some big plays. They've been getting better every week, too. And I think that Iowa offensively is even more inept maybe than they were at the beginning of the year because they haven't particularly been running the ball well either. So I actually think Rutgers has a better chance of matching up against the Iowa defense than Iowa does against the Rutgers defense. And because of that, I have Rutgers winning by the score of 17-10. Last game we're going to talk about here today is Duke versus North Carolina, a basketball rivalry in football. And I think Duke has kind of gotten beat up on the past few weeks here. The loss to Notre Dame, the loss to Louisville, and all of that. But I do think Duke is still a very good football team that plays defense at a high level. And North Carolina has been phenomenally disappointing at times. So I do think that there is a path to victory for Duke. However, the question of that kind of is on the shoulders of Riley Leonard and how well he can play. If Riley Leonard plays really well, then I think Duke has a serious chance to win this game. If Riley Leonard doesn't play well, then I don't particularly think they have any chance of winning the game. North Carolina, on the other hand, if Drake May has been off or if they haven't had the passing game going at a high level, they've been able to somewhat win in other ways. They've had the run game going at times. They've been able to sort of grind out a couple of quarters defensively. So I think North Carolina just has more ways to win this game than Duke does. And because of that, I have North Carolina winning over Duke by the score of 31-24. I do think it'll be a close game. I don't think North Carolina will be able to be particularly explosive early on in the game. I think they'll likely come out of halftime with some halftime adjustments, and they kind of figure out how to get things going a little bit more. And Duke, I just don't think has the firepower to keep up with this North Carolina team. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And it's at this time that I'd like to remind you to like if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or if you just have something to say, go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section below. I'll see you next time.